Hey everybody! In today's video, we are going to make a vintage treasure map out of things that don't look vintage at all. But I did have to show you this beautiful background stamp that goes with what I'm doing today. I'm using a couple of distress oxides. I have some alcohol ink. I have some tape. I have a brush. I have distress ink. I have some random stamp packaging. I have a piece of copy paper that is going to be my card front. And we are going to start with the secret vintage tape. This is a technique that is as old as I am, but it's so fun and I haven't done it in a long time. And when I got this stencil and these fun vintage travel themed stamps, I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make some vintage tape. Now, some terrible things are going to happen along the way, but you're going to stay with me. You're going to stay with me because in the end, it's all okay. Now, I have a little ink dauber thingy, and I'm putting some caramel alcohol ink on it. Butterscotch works also. There are lots of colors in the Ranger line that are going to work just fine. You just want something that looks like old cellophane tape. I'm doing this with my non-dominant hand. If you feel uncomfortable for me, I completely understand. I don't know why I have one entire hand that I can't use. It doesn't seem like a good design. It is what it is. So I wanted to do that first so that that will dry while we are doing the rest of the project. And so I'll just set that to the side and we will move on to this stunning map stencil. It's very modern looking, which is why I wanted to use it to create something vintage, because I wanted to show you that a technique can change the design of a product like this. So the first thing I'm doing is covering the back of the stencil with distress oxide ink, because the first part of this is to do a print of this beautiful map. It's so pretty. Now you'll want to mist this lightly to activate the ink and just get a little bit on there. You don't want it drippy because I still want a crisp image of this beautiful modern map. So I'll just gently press that down onto my copy paper and lift that up. And then you will need to clean this off before we go to the next step. The way that I find the easiest to do that is with alcohol ink and just a soft cloth or a paper towel or whatever. But alcohol, did I say alcohol ink? With rubbing alcohol. Rubbing alcohol will get virtually any ink off of a stencil, but the real reason I use it is because it dries instantly. So I'm ready to go to the next step with this stencil. When water gets trapped in the little fine nooks and crannies of a stencil, it can ruin your design when you're doing this double process of printing and then ink blending. So I will dry that and then we will get to work on step 2. So see, it's still looking very modern. It's not going to look modern at the end. Stay with me. So now you want to orient your stencil. So you printed with the back of the stencil and you're going to ink blend with the front so that the printed version lines up exactly with the front of the stencil. Hopefully that made sense to you. Now I'm using some vintage photo distress ink. I'm going to use several different colors here of browns and even a yellow to get the final look. And I'm doing a very haphazard kind of blending. You don't want this smooth because again, this is a vintage. This is an old map. This is a map from the late 1900s. And so we want it to look old, irregular, not perfect, not made by AI. I'll tell you that much. And then grab a little bit of mustard seed because I like kind of a warmer brown. So I always like to add a little bit of yellow to my brown, but also things do yellow with age. And that will give that illusion. Okay, so I will remove this stencil and now you can see what I mean. So you have the print, like the roads look sort of gritty and degraded because the stencil it's never going to print perfectly. And the background is still also filled in. So you're using both the open and closed parts of this stencil, which is very fun. So now I'm putting a little bit of Distress Oxide down on my mat, and I'm going to splatter it all over the mat. I think this is brushed corduroy is what this, but you can see all the ink colors at the beginning. And I didn't quite have enough, so I'm going to add both more ink, but I'm really going to add more water than I did the first time just to get it kind of goopy so I can get some good splatters. And I'll just hit it with my little honeybee blending brush just to get that ink off of the brush and onto the paper. So I love this. Why is splattering so much fun? Is splattering the mud puddle of adult crafters? I think it is. That's what I'm going with. Okay, at this phase, you will want to dry it again because you want those little splatters of ink to be completely dry for the next step. Remember, this is a very nice, smooth, sort of heavier weight copy paper that I do my printing on, but it's still copy paper, and so it's thin, and if it's wet when you start to fold it, it might tear. So make sure that it's really dry. Now I'm just putting some random folds into this, and then I'm going to ink them so that it looks like an old dirty crease of a mat. So much fun, so simple. Just try to do random folds. If you think too much about it, they're not going to be random, and then you're going to be disappointed that you have like regular little stripes all over your mat. So try to do it kind of quickly and without too much thought. I always bend down a corner when I do this technique because who doesn't bend down a corner of a piece of paper? We all do. We all do it. That corners are meant for bending. Okay, so now I have my little creases in there. I'm just going to wad it up and we're going to add some additional texture. Now you can do it more like scrunched than I'm doing it, and you'll get even more wrinkles. But I just did one kind of gentle scrunch, and then I'm using this flat blender to go over the top because that will pick up the scrunch details just a little bit. They won't be as prominent as the folds, the inked folds, but they will pick up a little bit of ink and add some interest to that background. So now we are moving on to the tape. I'm going to cut it into smaller pieces because this is just a card front. I don't need a really big piece. And you get to watch me struggle to take this off the packaging. Just embarrassing as the day is long. I have my piercing tool, which I will link to you in the comments, which I could have used to pick up this tape. I didn't. I just struggle and go on struggling. Eventually cutting out this one section of the packaging so that I can grab that a little bit easier. So you use your little piercing tool, okay? Don't be like me. Luckily, I have several more pieces of tape, so you are going to get to see this again. So enjoy my flailing around with my tape. Now, I like to put a couple of pieces on here just to really show that at some point this map fell apart and then we put it back together. And so I like to have them kind of at different angles. So I'll put one up here in the corner. This is such a fun element, like in junk journals and art journals. This little vintage, faux vintage cellophane tape. You can do this with packing tape as well. So whatever's easiest. It also might come off a little bit easier. Alcohol ink is sticky. That's something you have to realize. It might come off a craft mat a little bit easier than it came off this packaging. So give that a try. Here's the finished card with a fun little airplane theme. Head over to my blog for more information, and thanks so much for watching.